So it seems like the quiet part was recently said out loud about Xbox's recent multi-platform strategy and how it's more of a question about survival rather than profit gain. Because yeah, being on more platforms mean more chances for more money. It's a win-win, right? Well, it seems like this whole multi-platform thing was brought out of necessity rather than something that they just need more money for. So to anyone who is upset about this recent push by Xbox to go multi-platform on PlayStation, on Nintendo, as well as different devices, that you're upset that like your investment within the ecosystem of Xbox is being downgraded because of the multi-platform strategy, but be thankful that they're actually doing it in the first place, because if Xbox didn't do this, it looks like Xbox would have to do significant cuts to their gaming platform to the point where it'd be almost irrelevant. And how a former PlayStation executive highlights this push from Xbox to go multi-platform and how it's really benefiting Sony and everybody else beyond just Xbox. So will Xbox's recent multi-platform push work out well for the platform and their industry as a whole? We'll stay tuned throughout the whole video to understand all the details. In a recent interview on a podcast, former Sony Entertainment president Yoshida recently talked about how being the minority console is actually one of his biggest fears that he ever had as an executive, and saying how Xbox's strategy of going multi-platform is actually more of a win for PlayStation owners than anybody else. Obviously, that makes sense, right? You get to have Xbox games on PlayStation. Pretty straightforward, right? But he also kind of goes into more detail about why Xbox is making this big push for multi-platform, and it seems to be more out of necessity and viability as an industry for them, rather than something they just want for more profit seeking. And in this video, Yoshida strictly said that being the minority platform would have been a nightmare because it would have made first-party development almost impossible for them to maintain, which would totally make sense because Xbox for the longest time, for a few years there, was Xbox has no games, was kind of the narrative, and it was kind of true for a few years there, but now obviously with the recent acquisitions, that situation has definitely improved. But continuing on, Yoshida did say, I think it was a win for PlayStation owners. They didn't have access to those games before, but now they do. When I was managing first party, I am lucky it didn't happen. That if PlayStation became the minority platform, it would be impossible to maintain first party development because the best creators would leave. They are not just creatives, they're also business people as well. They want their games to reach the biggest audience as well. It's very natural if a platform is the minority, and if I was able to release a game in the minority platform only, it's unsustainable. That was the nightmare. Looking at the install base of Xbox hardware, it's kind of natural to understand what they're doing, and it's pretty straightforward. And also you'd have to think that with the recent acquisitions by Xbox, like they need to recoup their costs some way as well. Where you see here back in 2000 when they acquired Rare for $375 million, Mojang, the people who made Minecraft, for $2.5 billion back in 2014, GitHub, which I forgot they actually bought that back in 2018 for $7.5 billion, and then the ZeniMax acquisition for $7.5 billion, and of course the big one of Activision Blizzard for $75.4 billion, the largest game acquisition in gaming history. Like Xbox has been spending a lot of money when it comes to the gaming side of things, so they need to find a way to recoup that cost, and being Xbox only really hinders that ability to do so. Now I know the majority of my audience here on YouTube are based in the United States, and you're like, well, there's plenty of people out there who have Xboxes. Like, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense why they would be limiting themselves, right? I feel like you would want to build that brand of Xbox even stronger, making those games exclusive. Well, the thing is though, if you're in the United States or in the North American region, that's the only region where Xbox is really popular. If you look here at this world map, I can show you an example where the majority of the world here are PlayStation owners, right? Like you have North America, you also have like France and the UK. Of course, this is based off of the two recent console generations based on 2023 sales up to that point. So there is a fair amount of green here for people to buy into gaming, especially for the highly dense markets. But when you look at overall sales, that's when things really hit. Because this graph right here really showcases the disparity between PlayStation and Xbox. You can really see how Xbox Xbox's sales have really plateaued, especially with the Series X generation, where PlayStation 5 seems to be doing just as well as PlayStation 4. And the thing is that game development is getting more expensive, and the cost of making a game is going to be the same for Xbox as it is for PC, depending on obviously the game that you want to make. But I'm saying like these big AAA like single player experiences, they're going to cost $200, $300, even $400 million. And so if you release that game just on the Xbox platform, it really reduces the opportunity that you have to recoup your cost and make gaming a profitable venture for you to get into, especially since like you talk about how game development is just becoming more expensive. This could very well be a reason why they killed the live service of Halo Infinite, which Halo is supposed to be like one of their flagship games, right? But when your game development reportedly costs $500 million, then we've seen this also be shot down, but also confirmed slightly at the same time. But again, like this is probably the maximum it would have cost to be $500 million for marketing, engine development, and just the game development itself. It could definitely creep up to that 500 million mark. And if you're going to release yourself just on Xbox, well, that's kind of almost impossible to recoup that cost. Though yes, there have been reports of Halo Infinite being a profitable game now, but it's because it's really a shell of what they intended the Halo Infinite to be, and so the team is much smaller. And we've seen as Halo players that the live service, that you want to call it, is pretty much just like limping in, especially when you compare the live service experience of Halo Infinite compared to say like a Call of Duty, a Fortnite, Apex Legends, Rainbow Six Siege, or any other live service game out there. That it really is much smaller in scale in comparison to all the major live service games that it was intended to compete with. But let's be real here as well. PlayStation isn't exactly swimming in cash either, or thriving in this market, because it was recently revealed that the PlayStation 5 is selling just as well as the PlayStation 4, which, I mean, would kind of make sense, right? Like, you're like, okay, you're doing just as well. That's good, right? Especially from your last generation that you won as well, compared to the Xbox generation. Well, not exactly the case, because in 2020 era, these executives expected the gaming industry to grow a lot after 2020 because of all the COVID numbers that we have for everyone trying to stay inside. But this graph really showcases the boom that they were expecting, right? Where back in you can see how the revenue of video games really has gone up a lot, especially in the last 10 years or so. We see right here under 2020, it hits a peak because, well, everyone was stuck inside and they were like, well, I'll play some more video games. But the thing was, though, you can see at the end here, there's a little bit of a decline, which I think is more of a reset more than anything else of the game industry declining. So when you're doing just as well as you were last generation, that's actually viewed more as a lack of success than actual success. And that's when you see all these executives and these major game publishers go all in on gaming back in 2020, buying all these different studios, really putting investment into expanding the game and having larger scale games, more expensive games, because they figured like, well, if the industry is going to be growing at this rate, well, then we're just going to keep on making our money back. Well, it doesn't really seem to be the case as people return to offices, back to their normal lives in 2020. The gaming industry, well, still growing. It's not growing as fast as they expected or as they betted on, because these executives, when they greenlighting games, greenlighting consoles and hardware and everything, they're making predictions of like, okay, what's the market going to be like in 5-10 years? How we expect the market to be. And so that's where a lot of these gaming publishers are really coming into issue with how things are costing, the way things are going right now. And that's why we're seeing Xbox make this switch over to multi-platform, because they expected their console to sell super well, and it's really just kind of platforming and not really doing so great. I would also say, for all the people who already left a comment about that PlayStation stat that I just brought up, that it is a piece of the pie when it comes to the success of Sony. It's not all directly tied to the console, right? That's selling just as well as the PS4. As you can see later on, a commenter did say that there are more active monthly users when it comes to PlayStation, which definitely is the case, right? Like, it's definitely a great thing to see. But again, like I said, like, most people are probably not buying into the console as much as maybe Sony expected them to. So Xbox looking towards the future and realizing that the install base of PlayStation is very strong across the world and very tough to compete, have always been third fiddle when it comes to the PlayStation and Nintendo. Realizing that they need to expand, right? They need to grow this audience of gamers on the Xbox platform, because there is a lot of money to be made in gaming, right? And if you're going to tie yourself to just the Xbox platform, then it's going to be very difficult to overcome this legacy of generation after generation of install base being on these different types of consoles. And so what's the advantage that Xbox can have? The play anywhere, use any device, on anything else. just get a chance to just jump into the Xbox ecosystem, which is the hardest thing to make people do. And like I said, Xbox looking toward the future and looking into what the next generation is going to look like for console gaming. We do know that Xbox is currently in development of a handheld device that's specifically for that platform. I'm sure we're gonna have a new console as well that's kind of better hardware, right? But they don't really see much in the way of like improvements when it comes to say like what features are going to be available for the console, right? Because the console is a console, right? It's going to be a better piece of hardware for people to play their games for higher fidelity, but is it really going to be a reason why for people to justify the jump over to that platform from like PlayStation, from Nintendo, who have had these generations of people playing on those systems? It's just more of a reason of viability and sustainability for Xbox to go multi-platform than just trying to increase profits. Because of Yoshida's nightmare is the reality for Xbox, where it's almost unsustainable to maintain first-party games. Now, this question is just for my Xbox people. I know there's a lot of you out there. I built this channel out of Halo and Xbox-related games. Are you happy with Xbox's recent push for multi-platform and maybe less emphasis on making that console such a viable platform and going other locations and giving people more opportunities to play anywhere in any way that they like? Because personally, I'm really happy what Xbox is doing, right? I've always hated these exclusivity, artificial barriers that publishers have put on other gamers just to get them to buy into their system. It feels a bit scummy and lacks the credibility of like the platform itself, where people are buying it because you can only get it on this platform, rather than letting players play the way they want to play with the games that they want to play. And as myself, as an Xbox and PC player, that I actually really enjoy, especially the most recent push to PC, because their publishers are finally realizing how viable the PC platform actually is and how essential it is for a market growth right there, and not being so console exclusive. We've seen this doing with Sony as well when it comes to a lot of their exclusives going over to PC as well. So I'm really happy with Xbox's strategy, but again, let me know in the comments how you guys feel about the whole thing. If you made it this far in the video, I hope you earned your like, maybe even a subscribe. And if you want to know who the real ones are that made it to the end of the video, leave a green heart in the comments so I know which ones to like out there. So thank you all for watching, greatly appreciate it. Missing any content from me recently, check out these videos right here. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out.